Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Good morning. We had some really great guests.
It's been interesting this morning.
Our next guest is absolutely going to inspire us to go out and do more for our fellow human beings. She lived here in Florida for a while. I'm not sure where, but we're going to find out. And then she and her husband lived for a while in south of France, I think, if I remember right.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Lydia Dean has written a book called Jumping the Picket Fence. It's a memoir. The subtitle is A Woman's Search for Meaning from the Suburbs to the Slums. She focuses on partnering with the world's lesser-known humanitarians. Lydia Dean, good morning. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the south of France, actually.
You're in southern...
Oh, well, then I was good when I said bonjour.
How's the weather today? How's the weather in France?
It's a great spot to be calling in from. Yeah,
Oh, you poor thing, you.
So where did you live in Florida?
Downtown in the historic district on Lancaster Drive.
What city?
In Orlando.
Oh, Orlando. Okay.
In Orlando, yeah. In Orlando. In fact, that's where the whole story started. So I was interested looking at the schedule of radio today to say, it was,
okay,
not far from where it all started.
I had no idea. Okay, so tell me about that. What was going on in your mind? Well, before what was going on in your mind, what was going on in your heart? Because as somebody who wants to do humanitarian things, that's probably been with you since you were a little child, right?
It really was, but got really, really buried. And I was around, just before turning 30, was living in Orlando, had kind of achieved a spot in life that we hope to get, that we're kind of told to aspire to. Was living with my husband, happily married, had a nice house, was self-employed, headhunter. Just things were going really well, but I just kind of hit this wall where I looked around and I thought, okay, this is all really nice, this is all great, but I don't feel like I'm wearing my own shoes.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure this is the life for me, and it was a terrible spot to kind of wake up in. So that's where it all started.
I don't know if this is the best way to ask this question, but were you dabbling in where your heart was? Like, did you volunteer on Saturdays or something?
No, not at all. I was just feeling lost, and I think when you're lost, you don't even know why you're lost. And I just, thought that I was going to be happy with that path that was ingrained in us to choose, and it just wasn't for me, and I didn't find my purpose in it. So I was, so lost that I don't think I knew what step to take to find out who I was. Mm-hmm. So, the book takes place over, 14 years of writing in a journal. I had no idea what I was going to live. I had no idea that I would publish a book. I mean, if you were to tell me that was all going to happen, I would have told you no way. But, the first kind of nagging feeling that wasn't a happy feeling was actually the first step to something that ended up really being beautiful. And I think we run from stuff that doesn't feel good. We squish it, we numb it away, and for me it was just so it was such an awful feeling. I couldn't run from it. I couldn't shake it. But I also didn't know what step to take to make it go away or to make it better. So it was a very clueless start.
Well, I would love to know the conversation between you and your husband when you finally opened up about the need to do something.
Oh, it was really bad.
It
did not go over well.
Because why? What did you say to him?
Something like, would you consider maybe going away for a little bit, like a year or so, somewhere, anywhere? And we were in business together at the time, and had worked really hard to get to a place of stability. We were in our not our very first home, but our one after that, and our kids were like 1 and 3, and that wasn't the time to kind of chuck it all to the wayside and go off for what, in search of what. And that's exactly what he said to me. He said, what do you want? Like, what are you searching for? If you could at least tell me that.
But we know then, he went. Right?
Maybe I'd understand, but yeah.
But we know that he did eventually say, okay, let's do this. What changed him?
I think he realized it was a breaking point for us. I think he realized that what I was searching for was not to go out and have a good time, and it wasn't fleeting. I think he knew it was a deep search for meaning. And we've been together since the age of 15, and I think there was a trust in there. Sometimes you just hold hands, and you know that you trust in something greater. And he was, I can't thank him enough for doing that, because I don't know where we would be today if that hadn't happened. Either me living a life that wasn't mine, or not together. But either way, it was a very scary point at age 30, where you're supposed to be kind of building your world, not deconstructing it, which was exactly what I was asking him to do.
So was the pull to change geographically, or was the pull to change what you were doing? And obviously you changed geographically, but that can't solve everything, just being in a different place. I mean, you must... Did going to South France, the south of France, wherever you are, did being someplace new give you an opportunity to do what your heart felt you wanted to do?
I think that's a great question. I think it was a perfect first step, because when you're kind of surrounded and feeling suffocated by something that doesn't feel right, a good place to start is just to stretch out and breathe and start to think clearly. And we actually, our first jaunt was to Costa Rica, and that was really productive for us, because there's this immense nature around you, and there was a silence. And I think in that silence, I started to listen to an inner voice that we all have, that sometimes gets kind of drowned out in the everyday and in the noise of every day. So we went to Costa Rica for a bit, and that's where I began to hear sort of that inner voice that there's a part of you that wants to touch humanity and to find your place in it. And so then we moved to the south of France, and really, for 6 years we didn't do a whole hell of a lot. I mean, we rented out our house. We got into renovation and rented out a house, and the money we made from renting, which is now a big kind of thing. Everyone, lots of people are putting their house on Airbnb for the summer, or with their secondary house.
So you rented out your house in Orlando in order to make money?
No, this was in the south of France.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
And yeah, we took the leap of faith and went to the south of France. Brought our business with us, but 9/11 happened during that time in our early years, and it made us sort of rethink our priorities and made us realize just how fragile and precious life is. So we stopped working in the headhunting business and bought a house and renovated it, and then we rented it out in the tourist season here in France. And then with the money we made, we would travel, and we just saw the world, and it was with our kids, and it was incredibly liberating, and really just opened up our eyes. Now, we didn't get ahead financially during that time, obviously, because the priority wasn't making money. We were just existing sort of one year to the next. But we were able to at least, begin to tap into what that inner voice was saying. And for me, it was connecting with humanity and doing humanitarian work and understanding what people need in the world and how we can each contribute to that.
So I have so many questions for you, but I don't want to I want to make sure to talk about exactly what the book is about. So the book is your memoir, and in the book you talk about the humanitarian work that others have done. Is that right?
Well, the early part of the book, well, most of the book is about this search, a search that we might all feel that we've got going on, a search for kind of who we are and what our purpose is. I mean, if
Okay.
You know, if there's one big question, it's that, right? You know, what are we here to do?
I guess
what's the purpose?
I'm so sorry for interrupting. I didn't mean to do that. There's a delay, and it's sometimes awkward, so I apologize. I think what you're doing, though, in the humanitarian thing that your story does, is it tells us a real truth about who we are, and that we have to sometimes stop and listen to that inner voice. By telling us your story, you're basically reinforcing the belief that many people have, that you sometimes have to stop. There's a whole philosophy that says that if you are praying to God but you're not stopping to listen, then you're never going to get the message, and whatever that message is. And in your case, it had to do with going someplace new and doing new things.
Well, it did, and I'm glad you bring that up, because the first step for me was to stop, right, and to listen to me and where that would lead, but how it bled into, you know, building a nonprofit, a foundation. So Go Philanthropic is a foundation that I ended up co-founding with some really wonderful people, and at the very heart of what we do is listen. So, you know, that I learned myself in the early days, but you know, we assume that we have the answers for everybody else, especially people in need, when really, you know, that sitting and listening to what they know is right for themselves is actually what we feel is the key. So we identify and strengthen organizations that are working in some very, very difficult conditions, working in areas that our humanity shouldn't be so proud of: human trafficking, child labor, early marriage, communities that are cut off from access to health, education, and human rights. And, you know, what we find is that if we sit and listen to what they know is good for them and their communities, and what they know about what they have, and they're all sitting on wisdom and assets that maybe aren't so clear to us from the outside. But once we listen, then we can be in support of that emerging. And that type of philanthropy was sort of what I did for myself in the early days. It was to just kind of shut up and go inside. And when we do that, we end up finding the best in ourselves. So it's really interesting that that later on that became the building blocks for sort of the values around, you know, if we want to say, quote, the giving world, which, you know, that word and terminology I'm not such a fan of, because really, you know, philanthropy is caring for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
absolutely.
about giving.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I love the title, by the way. Jumping the Picket Fence. It conjures up the idea. You know, when I drive past a field full of cows, I always say to the cows, you know, you could get out of there. You could jump that fence if you wanted to. You're stronger than that fence. And
you mean plow through it, not jump over it.
Or jump over it. But the thing is, how that applies to me. See, when I look at that, I say, well, this is me. I'm talking to me. I could jump over that fence. Yeah. You know, I could say, you know, why do I keep doing those things that I don't really care to do? The fact that you were able to recruit your husband to do it too. And you brought obviously all four of you went to France, right?
We all four went to France. We later adopted a child, our third, so we're five now. But yeah, it really is our self-imposed barriers. The picket fence represents, you know, several things, and one is that barrier that we place there.
Right.
We can say, sure, it's a societal barrier that we should be, you know, building lives around our own, you know, success and our own, you know, making it. But you know, that we have our own mental barriers and fears that inhibit us, and
it's
it
always
keeps
fear.
the cow settled on one side, right?
Right.
So what if?
So there are so many.
What if you just jumped?
What if you jumped? And there were probably people who have jumped and said, oh my gosh, that was a mistake. But most of the time when we hear from people, they have jumped the picket fence, to use your words, and have found this whole new life. I tell this story quite frequently. There was a lady we had on the show who was a Wall Street a Wall Street lady, and September 11th happened, and she decided, I don't want this anymore. She moved here to Florida, to New Smyrna Beach, and started painting T-shirts and made way less money than she ever made. But she told us up and down she's never been happier, and she jumped her picket fence to do whatever she felt was a calling to do.
No, there's a phrase for that. It's called shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah.
So true, and the use of that term calling is exactly what it felt like. It felt like there was a knock at the door, a call to do something, and the initial response inside your body is, wow, I don't think I want to do that, because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be asked to do. And what if I suck? What if I fail? What if I'm being asked to do something that I can't do? Or even the opposite. What if I can do it? What if I am able? What if I am capable of doing what this call is asking me to do? Well, what then? That's even scarier. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it really is about kind of stripping down to a vulnerable place, setting that fear aside, and saying, I'm going to risk it all because,
Well, I keep hearing you say that one two-letter word. I keep hearing you say that one two-letter word over and over and over again, and the word is if. That's the smallest, biggest word in the language, I think. If. We don't know what's going to happen. If you don't take that leap, if you don't go over that picket fence or around it or through it, if you don't go on the other side, is the grass greener there? Is there grass there? Does it need to be plowed? Mowed? You don't know until you go. And the big word, a big little word, if.
That there needs to be sort of a trust in something that is greater than us.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I think we cling.
Well, and when we look around at nature, I look in the yard sometimes and I see the crow, and he's out there finding bugs, and I say, I could never find a bug, and he finds enough to live. And so I always think,
only Larry.
But if God can do that for the crow, he does it for me too, right? There's always going to be something. So what was the fear in part? Are you going to be able to provide for yourselves?
We walked away from a really secure lifestyle.
Yeah,
we were
it.
doing well at a very early age. So, of course, our parents were like, what on earth are you doing? What are you walking away from? It was almost as though people thought we didn't care enough about it, that it was sort of flippant. But there was fear that we weren't going to be able to live the lifestyle that we had left. But the minute we set foot anywhere, and the first trip to Costa Rica doesn't really count because that was sort of an extended vacation, or a working vacation. But when we moved to the south of France, we had no idea what we were going to do with ourselves.
Sure.
And we always had the back door that, you can always go home. We can always go home. But the minute we set foot here, and every other step we took after that, the experience reinforces how much there is to learn in the world, and just how satisfying it is to get out of your comfort zone. And it's been, I think the world has been our teacher day in and day out, and it just doesn't get old. So,
Lydia.
Yeah.
I have a favor to ask you. I want you to show us your photo album. This is let me set it up for you. If I were to go to a successful real estate guy, show me the photo album of your successes. He might show me an office building he bought and sold, or an office building he built. He might show me some property. What is in your photo album? Are you showing me human beings and lives changed? What is in your photo album?
Yep, for sure. But I think what I'm showing you is an opportunity. So we developed a philanthropic travel company, was our first step, called Go Philanthropic Travel. And, the purpose of the organization, which is actually a social enterprise, was to bring people to the doorsteps to amazing and inspiring, courageous people and organizations who are doing the heavy lifting out there. And it isn't to bring people so that they can, build schools and wells, and it's actually to listen to what they're doing, to become more aware of what's happening in the world. And when they do, you realize how much people are doing out there with less access to basic things, yet they're able to fight against some of these awful global issues. So it's providing an opportunity. That's a picture I'd like to show, and that's just cracking the door. What happens after that is up to each individual, and for some, we've seen some people really make big changes in their lives after visiting small nonprofits around the world doing this important work. Many people do donate, and that's important. Helping these organizations to do more of what they're already doing financially is important, but it's not everything. It's understanding their brand of courage and their resilience that is humbling and that makes us, want to go home and do that as well and be that as well in our own lives, be it, to donate to a program that they visited or just to be a good community member at home. So that's in there. In terms of being able to open up channels so that resources are shared in the world, and that's how I see philanthropy and giving is less of a check writing and more of an opening up at the pathways of resources so that they're more equitable. So that's in the photo book. It's varied, I guess.
What does what's between breakfast and bedtime at the end of the day? Are you out there digging ditches? Are you out there sewing clothing? And not just you, but the other philanthropic travelers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are they actually doing during the course of the day?
They're actually meeting with these change makers. So, for example, in Guatemala, we might guide a trip to a clinic, and that clinic has been started by a woman whose brother was killed during the Guatemalan Civil War because he was a doctor providing healthcare services in Mayan communities, and the Mayan communities in Guatemala are very underserved, and they're marginalized. So we'll bring people to the doorsteps of that organization. Now, Go Philanthropic Foundation is a separate nonprofit that we built that actually is devoted to identifying those programs, to finding people doing great things in the world and helping to strengthen the work that they do. So the travel company brings people along. It's sort of the vehicle so that they can see and understand the world and then find their own unique way to contribute to it. And it's very rarely doing for. So it isn't at all what we see in sort of the volunteerism industry where people go out and are physically building schools in countries where they're perfectly capable actually to build those schools themselves. So it's a very different thing. It's a listen and learn first, and it's an understand the context of why we have these global issues. And once you understand the context, you can then begin to say, well, what do I have to offer to this situation? What can I bring to the party? What do I have as a resource to share? And it's not always just a check. It's so much bigger than that. But at least it gets the dialogue going in your mind, what that could be. And
the book is an extension of that. The book is called Jumping the Picket Fence. It's written by our guest, Lydia Dean. I found it on Amazon. You have 27 5-star reviews across the board, all 5 stars. I wanted to read one line from one of them, and it says this: Lydia's story will likely wake up the nagging spirit inside of you. You'll find yourself taking a deep sigh as you read through the pages and pausing often to reflect on the meaning her journey has on your decisions and your life. I think that's exactly what you're doing. And the book is on Amazon. You see, you have a website, lydiadean.com, correct?
Yep. Or if you're interested in traveling, go philanthropictravel.com or go philanthropicfoundation.org if you're interested in learning more about the global issues that we're involved with. We've got a couple of seats left on our trip to Guatemala this summer. That's anybody who doesn't have summer plans.
All right. Well, très bien. We will be following you, Lydia. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We will be right back.
Windsor of Ocala is hosting a professional mixer and fundraiser June 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. Tickets $10. All proceeds benefit the Humane Society.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News, I'm Lillian Wu. Donald Trump Jr. testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee right now, telling reporters when he arrived he has nothing to correct.
This closed-door session is not looking for new evidence of a conspiracy with the Russians. It's really doing a deep dive on discrepancies in witness testimony and whether further action is warranted.
Fox's Catherine Herridge. Former Red Sox legend David Ortiz on the mend, reportedly taking a few steps in his Boston hospital room after surgery. Meanwhile, a second suspect is in custody for a shooting in the Dominican Republic. And the